Welcome. My name is Stanford Anderson. I'm the head of the Department of Architecture. Welcome to the first of our fall series of lectures. We have an unusually full program this fall because we have incorporated two series inside the full series. So tonight you'll be hearing, as you know, the first of three lectures by Santiago Calatrava. Next week, at this same time and place, we will have the first of three lectures by young French architects, different architects each time in that series. That's co-sponsored with the University of Virginia and Catholic University in Washington. And then there will be a few other lectures as well. I'm only going to mention one of them tonight, the fifth Pietro Belluschi lecture by Renzo Piano on October 28th. And I mention that not only because it's a very special event in our fall term, but also to say that some of the books that show the works of Renzo Piano have been put on reserve in Roach Library under the fall lecture series, so you can find the work to look at there. And having mentioned that, we've done the same relative to Santiago Calatrava. You'll find a group of monographs and books on his work also on reserve. We are sponsoring the lectures of Santiago Calatrava jointly with the Department of Civil Engineering. And in a few minutes, I'll ask Rafael Bras, the head of the Department of Civil Engineering, also to welcome Santiago Calatrava to our series of lectures. So this is a kind of double introduction. And I know that he has a lot of slides and many things to say, so I will make the rest of my time rather brief, only to say that Santiago Calatrava is still a very young man and with a very large production. When he visited us about a year and a half or two ago, we enjoyed an excellent lecture on his work. And in the meantime, we have pursued to have continuing relations with him. And this is what we think is and hope is the first fruit of that discussion and connection with him. And he has prepared three special lectures for us, which in turn we hope will be another book to put on reserve in the library later. Santiago Calatrava has, as I said, built already a great deal. You'll see much of that in the lecture, so I'm not going to begin listing the names of the works. And similarly, that has resulted in any number of prizes and any number of exhibitions. And that, too, is just too numerous to mention. So I think that there's no question that the work that he shows will speak for himself. Just one last note on my part, and before I turn to Rafael Bras, it is our hope also that, it's our plan, and we think it will be realized, that we will have an exhibition of models of Calatrava's work in the Compton Gallery starting in the middle of November, just after his last lecture. Rafael, if you would make a final introduction.
About 2 years ago, I was taking a sleepy walk in Valencia, Spain, when I saw this unusual but simple and very beautiful bridge, which really woke me up. At that point, I turned around to the person who was walking to me and asked who was the architect, and they said it was Santiago Calatrava. I frankly must admit that at that point, I didn't know who Santiago Calatrava was. But I came quickly, I'm a quick learner, and figured that I that I better learn. And immediately proceeded to try to remedy my ignorance. I asked a colleague of mine, Professor Herbert Einstein, to help me on that. And Herbert took the initiative to contact Dr. Calatrava and to begin also thinking of how we could get him involved at MIT. It turns out that shortly after, he came and gave a lecture here, invited by the Department of Architecture. The rest is history. We're here for a series by a very distinguished architect. I am very pleased that I have learned a lot more about him, and I hope to learn a lot more. And I'm also particularly pleased to see a joint collaboration between the Department of Architecture and the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. I think the idea of the engineer as an architect and as an architect as an engineer is something that we need to do better here at MIT, and I hope this is the beginning. Without further ado, then, Dr. Calatrava. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the possibility of speaking here in this school. I think I would like to make a very brief introduction to the context. After having been as a student for a long time, something like 14 years, studying in Valencia and then in Zurich, I started my praxis as an architect and engineer, and during 16 years I have been exactly now, in November, 16 years, I have been working very intensively in the praxis. The only contacts that I have had to institutions like this here was sporadically giving a talk. And for the first time, I took the commitment to give a series of talks in the perspective to communicate this experience as good as I can do. I think it makes sense because 16 years is a period of time who are as important in my life as the previous period of almost also 14, 15 years. And also because 15 years define a little bit a generation, also an etap in the life of a person. And I am convinced that the things that I am saying it to the next generation, because those 15 years define the circle around a person of something 30 years, so people who will certainly invent other styles and will find his own way, as much as I also interpret the works of those who has been working before me in all the modesty. I think also it makes sense also because the previous time that I spent, because also I got a lot from the university, or I got also a lot of my teacher. I also was quite a, if not a good, a very patient student because I spent so long time. And I think this is an important point to underline. The second point is that I have tried to structure in a very simple way, you see, which it is probably, let's say, the wrong way to do it. And also to speak and the thoughts, you see, and the experience in those years. And again, after having tried in several, or interpreted in several ways, I thought the best it is to speak on my own experience, because in the fact, this is the only thing that I can communicate. So speak on my own experience, I mean to look back to the works that I have done and to try to introduce you in very essential thoughts and steps who permits me to continue working during those years and to go from one building to another and try a little bit to implement a little bit more and a little bit more thoughts and just in a very elemental and let's say and direct way to communicate you this experience of the 16 years. Then once I decide that, I have had to divide it in several groups, and so I chose the idea of the material as the very first one, because the material seems to me, you see, as an approach to the architecture, maybe the most substantial way. I mean, from the ruins of the architecture at the least, you see, you have just some stones there, something like that. So, I mean, the material part of the architecture is in my opinion, let's say the physical support of the architecture seems to me to be very, very important and very fundamental. And I also found a constatation, you see, on this, and it is reading or trying to find an old definition of architecture. You see, a very old definition of architecture, or what is an architect, let's say. I found one who I think is, has been transmitted into our days, almost, let's say, untouched, I suppose, untouched, and who is very old. It comes from the time of the Egyptians, from the time of the construction of the pyramids, let's say 6,000 years ago or something like that, even more, maybe 7,000 years ago. And it is interesting because it is the definition is very much related not only to the person, but also very much to the materials that this person can work with. So, for example, they speak about gold, bronze, brass, stone, wood, and could you imagine gold, bronze, and silver? You know, there was all precious material. You know, today you see gold is maybe more precious than silver, much more than bronze, but at this time, you know, to go those materials was very difficult. And to work with them also certainly means to possess technology and things like that. And I will read you that. And the Lord spoke into Moses, saying, See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and understanding and in knowledge, and all manner of workmanship, to devise skillful works, to work in gold and silver and brass, and in cutting of stones for setting, and carving of wood, to work in all manners of workmanship. Well, this is from the Exodus. And it is interesting, you know, in the verse number 3, it says, I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And immediately after that, in the verse number 4, he says, to devise skillful works in gold, silver, and brass. If you make a correspondence between the two verses, you will understand also that for an architect or an engineer or whatever, because at this time there was not different, you know, between architects and engineers, the idea of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge for this man was like gold, silver, and brass, precious materials of the time. And I think it's very expressive, you see, of and very alive, because at the same time, you see, at the one side, you have almost like, you have the person, you see, with those qualities. At the other side, you have the materials. So to, let's say, in these terms, I thought that probably, you see, is a good first step to go ahead in the understanding of architecture is to understand what is concrete, what is steel, what is wood, you know, in our time, how to use them. What this signifies, you see, what are the forms that you can achieve, what are the difference between the forms? Can you go from one form to another using the same material? And this is what I want to try, showing you simply, you see, from the very first steps, you see, into the last works. So, this is a small figure done by using the toys, pieces of toys. And in the fact, it's interesting because you see you have, in the figure itself, you have you have here a part, then another one, then you have a hook here, then you have two small supports, like simple supports, and then you have a stone here hanging with a cord around and hanging there, and then the force of the stone goes through all the two pieces, and it is materialized, as you see, in stone, wood, and then parts of steel, and then here are hooks, you see also special ones. So it's a very simple way. It's like a small toy, but a lot of context is there. You see also if you started, you see to look the different pieces of the toy, how the colors are put together. You see, which it is simple, a casual situation, but I mean, it is. There is no doubt. You see that just the way to hold a stone in the air is a matter of expression, and the complexity. You see that something can achieve, and the relation. You see here the point. For example, this part working in tension. The hook here also clearly working also in tension, and also this is a spindle separating both things, working under compression, and the symmetry of the whole figure is also important. This is one of the very first works that I have done. It is nice because it's related to a music school in St. Gallen. This is a music school for children. And they have had an auditoria here, and then they need to extend it to the next room. And so we have had just simply to take away the wall in between, who was, let's say, something like 20 feet or maybe a little bit less by 10 feet high. And just to support the 3 floors over there, it was necessary to build a frame. And so it came to this piece here. And the idea of the piece is very simple. It has 2 parts who are done in metal, symmetric, and then they are supported here in a support who goes along the wall. So a person will be something like that. Here, and then you see this is a simple support, and then they are 5 tensional elements. 5. Then, I mean, it is, then let's say here up in the top I have also 2 profiles who are done in double T's. They are, you see the wall was coming like that, and then I have had here 2 double T's, small, two L's, you call that 2 L's. And then also small links here together. And you see, in order to make it a bit more, I decided to separate the elements who was working in tension, making them polish. It was all in steel. Only one material, I have to say. I decided to do only one material, like a game, one material. Like with the churches who are only done in stone, or many buildings who are simply done in. Then the other was just black painted. I am doing here with red, but it was, let's say, dark, black painted. And then the steel goes behind, and with a small element like this, you see, hits the 2 plates. Well, 2 symmetrical plates, you see, on the both sides. And then I say also, I should not use any bounding system. I mean, you see, the key of the evolution of the technology in steel is very strongly related to the way, not only the quality of the steel that you produce, but also the links between the steel. When you bolt, when you rivet, or when you weld, you see, this makes extremely big difference in the use of steel and in the possibilities and in the capacity. So I decided to don't use any link. So I have always, for example, if this element is working in tension, I have to turn it back and link it here where let's say, where the exchange of the forces is happening, in this point behind. And also, even here, you see the forces, the width coming here, and even this small plate, you see, this is just a pendular support, and it is just hold with 2 pins. So in a way, it is like making working with a castle, you know, making with play cards, you see, like making a castle, and then, of course, using to stabilize the whole thing, the frame of the building itself, involving in this, you see the upper part of the building and also the side, which is stabilizing this column and bringing the force here. So this is first statement. I don't know what it, you see here the details of the joint here. The details of the joint, and also here you see the polished metal. You see also here the plate. If we could see the other slide, I don't know if it happens, we will see also the This is, of course, this was also possible because the people working also, you know, they possess also a very high level of craftsmanship, you see, to make it in a very big and very precise way. Excuse me? I see. Yes, okay. So what also, you see, in this type of approach, you see, there is always a little bit a place also for the, let's say, for why 5, you see, 5 elements. In the fact, you see the rotation point is here, and each one of them becomes, if not equal force, of course, because those who are more separated, they have a major movement when this will descend. But in any case, all works under tension. I chose 5 and start to do 1, which it is a redundance, you understand? But I do that. I could also even use 2 and say if 1 will not work, there will be another 1 who will work. But I decided to do 5 because, as you know, the music, you read it over 5 lines. And then I found it is a good reason, isn't it, to introduce, I mean, it could be also, I don't know, you see, the beam could also maybe suggest a guitar or something like that, but this is not the case. It's certainly not the case. But the 5 lines, in any case, you see, I think you make also something like that here when you started putting the note. Yeah, okay, you see it here, thank you. You see it here, the pendular element here, and then the 5 other. Then I discovered also on the way, I discovered also that the width of the tensional members was so big that they was simply hanging, isn't it? Even if working, you see, I neglected the problem of the own width of the element. You see, who will, for example, in a cable steel bridge will be fundamental because you will have, you see, it will even change the moduli. Well, it is a kind of way to understand what is you see this hanging in very long cable. And then what we do, it is we put a small support in between and load them in the lowest one. You see it well here. See, it was a kind of improvisation, as you see here in this point. Yes, now you see another type of works that I have done was also related to interventions in other buildings. For example, in this case, this is a school, and I have had to introduce an entrance, a central element, the roof of the library, and also roof the aula. And I thought, you see, I wanted to go one step more and introduce another element, let's say. You see, and the element is not only the material quality that I will change in several cases. You see what I mean? I will work, for example, let's say, one part in concrete and steel, another part work it purely in steel and glass, another one wood and steel, or wood and concrete. And so having chosen this dialectic of changing material, you see, to experiment in each one of the different solutions, you see, a new solution for a roof with a particular material, I thought also it could be interesting to work with the light, you see, which it is, in my opinion, the light, I mean, the control of the light for the particular space. And this is the entrance. In the entrance, the idea of the entrance was generated by the fact that the plan was like that, and then I put with a diagonal element, you see, I create a canopy very strongly related to geometry, you see, who will consist in recreate, let's say, 2 cones with a diagonal position arc and with the entrance here. And this will work like that and like that in the other direction. And not only like this, but also to have the cross-section with the pipe who has a certain resistance to the torsion and will take also the gutter with it, to have it related to the facade. So in the fact, you see, even if this has a torsional stiffness that I has maybe used also in other things like bridges, the torsional stiffness of the pipe or the axial pipe, but in this case, I fix it into the top of the facade, with which I create a link between facade and canopy. And so the facade and the canopy works together. They are solved in the same gesture, and they are also coherent as far as you see, as far as the facade and let's say the canopy has to do an ensemble and has to become a single thing. You see here 2 views of the entrance, and then you see also a detail at the end with how it arrives. You see with this kind of penguin tie here in the back. You see here in the back where the water is coming down. Also, there are some details, like for example, here the glass don't touch the extremity. Not here more because it's covering the whole facade, but not at the. And then you see also some detail from the interior into the exterior. It was a small intervention, but that for me was, as I tell you, as a kind of workshop, of experimental workshop, was very, very important. Also, you see, it was a time in which the relation with the craftsman, became for me also a kind of prolongation of new school. And of course, you see, as it happens with in the other, you see the basic idea of independent of the fact, you see, of the construction. It is clear looking at the especially at the elevation, that the idea you see of a leaf or the idea of a palm, you see, very figurative idea. You see, I mean, it is not. You see, was part of the design. This is without any doubt, or even it could be maybe even more beautiful like that. So there is certainly behind the very first approach, the free approach into the architecture that I has had, looking for inspiration in natural forms and also looking to find my own language, you see, in a very simple approach, in the simple observation of this, what was surrounding me or things who motivate me was very important. As much as, let's say, as almost as much as the material or, yeah, you see here also, this is a second space. When you come into the interior of the school, you arrive into the central space. The photographs, they are not terrible, but it doesn't matter. You may maybe understand there is a kind, you see there is a cupola which is circular, and then the cupola is used for, in this case, wood. And as you see, observe also the fact of the light coming in and the way how the light is here goes decrease. You see also how the border disappear, the back border in the light. You see also here the part in steel, the tension member, also the spindles here supporting and being part of those triangles, and the lantern in the center of the cupola. And you see in this case the choice of the shape was very simple. You see, I going out from a circle, subdividing it in segments, in radial segments, cutting them here, and those radial segments, you see, was done using a V. I mean, the basic shape was something like that. Let's say something like that. And in this V, you see, I cut a part here. You see, who makes. You see, in plan, you see, gives a shape like that, opening the interior and leaving the possibility of putting here a single element, you see, to signify the compression in this part here. At the other side, you see in elevation, you see, you will see the element working like that. And having a resultant, you see, I separate, you see, sometimes just in order to put in scene all the different type of supports and recreating here a free ring, you see, around, who is the ring that you are seeing in the cross-section that we saw before. You see it here also very well. You see this element here. You see also this element here, and then the support behind. You see, this is the support in which the width is coming into the wall. Then this is a ring who is floating. So the idea of the ingravity, you see, was signified by the fact of showing the tension ring and hitting, or not hitting, but putting back, you see, in the corners here, the supports of the real supports of the cupola. So if you have here a band, as it is the case there, you see, and this is, let's say, is visible, but is not significant, then you get the impression, let's say, that the whole thing is floating in the space, in the interior space. And, well, as you see also, this seems to me also to be important. It is, you see, it's clear when you see all those shapes like that. Very much the whole shape can be associated to the petals. To the petals, you see. And now, you see, there was a library also to be covered. And you see, first of all, I thought also important, as before, is also the idea of the light, even more. In a library, the control of light and the relation of the light with the space is very important. So I thought it's necessary to liberate the walls and to have tangential light. You see, let's say, as Louis Kahn maybe will do, you see, because also it's also important to watch, you see, how other people has been reacting, you see, to material and to the use of light. And so I decided to make the roof at the interior floating. And as you see the main support is a column. The water is coming in, you see, and this is a kind of shell who is subdivided in several shells. So it's not an orthodox shell in terms of a hyperboloid, a paraboloid, or segments of it, but it's quite a free form. However, you see, we has in several directions. Sometimes we have right lines or almost right lines. And then the first, you see, having as a plan, such a situation, I thought, you see, this is the position of the roof. So the plan of the roof, it was very rigid, and then I chose a center, let's say almost the center of gravity. It's not the case, and then I decided to hold just laterally the corners, you see, in order that it don't move laterally, you see, that it is well fixed. But the whole support, let's say the width is going through the central column in which also the water is coming down. And then light will descend along the walls, you see, tangentially here. Now, about the genesis of the idea, I think also it's important to signify that here I started thinking, you see, let's say, I started thinking on the idea of a book, see, an open book. And also the idea of, against like in several other cases, you see very much the idea of the elevation of the roof, you see, of emphasizing very much the idea of floating. You see, the roof should float, you see, which it is also a theme in which I think you see, the idea of lightness is very much given often because the contraposition of materials or of statical systems, as it was before the spindle, you see, the support, you see, of the roof, the support, in relation to the roof. You see, even if this is heavy and this is light, you see, but this contraposition of the two materials and the light coming on the side, you see, will make that the whole roof seems to fly. It means, you see, the book, you see, who was, in the fact, the basis, you see, of the shell, who was also conceived like this. So in a way, you see, wanted to become also at the other side, let's say, something like a bird or something like that. You see, so it is a kind of superpositions of ideas, you see, but coming simply from the idea of a book, because if you look also, you see it here also. See, it is, I don't have any, but you see, it's the idea of a leaf, you see, or something like that, hold in this support. Yes, you see here also the corners with the supports that I showed before. You see the small links just to stabilize the shell who turns around. And also you see here the interior of the Libreria with the shell. Very close also. I mean, the presence, the physical presence of the shell at the interior was also very important. Now, you see, something who also is very interesting. It is the construction process, you see, how you build things, how people, you see. And sometimes, you see, the way how you decide, how you build things, decide also the shape of them, the width of them, because you have to transport them, because you have to produce them somewhere and transport it. And it is sometimes very important, you see, to recognize those things. And I mean, they are, in my opinion, until now, they has been never been decisive, but they influence very much, you know, the way how things are done. And you see here, those are parts of the roof of the aula when they was transported. And here also how they was put over the roof. You see, also making a wooden shell, you see over there, you know, with arcs at the interior. You see also here how they came down and the joint. This is also very interesting. You see the fact of the column, the supports. And also you see something who is very interesting. It is especially when you precast. I like very much brute concrete. You see concrete done on site, but also precasting concrete can be very nice. This is, you see, for example, a formwork, because then the freedom in the choice of forms and the complexity that you can achieve is even major. And remember, you see, concrete in my mother language, you see, in Valencia, we used to say formigó. Formigó comes from forma. In Spanish, you also say hormigón with H. Hormigón, who is F of the forma, formigón, who means is the material that you can give a form. This may maybe be a good definition of concrete. And so you are very free, you know, choosing the shape and also the quality and the texture and many other things. And then you see when we wanted to produce the pillars of this space, you see, if you have to do a formwork who is, let's say, 3 meters high, once you fill it, you get a huge pressure in the and then you have to do a very complex formwork, and you have to pay a lot of money for it. So how to do that, you see, with less money, is just cut the column in two and make two formworks and pull it horizontally and then glue the two parts, isn't it? And this is what we have done here. You see here the two parts of the column, you see, produced horizontally. It has another advantage. You see, you have almost all the parts are has a formwork. You see, so even the basis, everything is concluded. You don't have any place in which you have been casting the concrete. You see here, this is a concluded column. You see here also detail of the joint that we will have then later on. You see here also taking away, putting the two forms. Here you see, this should be the other way around, but it doesn't matter. And then you see here also taking out from the formwork. And here also how the columns works together. Then we use epoxy and also pins, you see, in order to have also resistance into the shear forces, a transversal resistance. And you see, these are the concluded columns, and this is the side of, you see, when we has been putting the columns there. Then you see also always on the side, you see, it's interesting also, I decided to put a small plate here because the link between wood and concrete is done by this plate and another transversal plate who is coming in, and then this is the pin who links the plate into the, or who defined in a way the articulation. You can always read the joint of the column, you see the vertical joint. And then this is some views of the aula when it was concluded. So if I may maybe just give you some references, you see, to this shape, you see, what I wanted to achieve was quite simple. You see, this is, first of all, you see, I propose, you see, to move in this time not to put the roof into the wall, but to make it emerge, let's say here. And then to create a parabolic arc at the interior. Parabolic arc. And then to have here the shell, independent, and then to have here a gutter, both sides. And then to have a very light window, longitudinal, because this will also bring light in the interior and especially emphasize very softly the lighting here and also bring transparency with all those elements who are all regularly and all equal. Yeah, they have all the same side. Let's say they are all pieces of wood by, let's say, something like 3 inches by 3 inches, who are very standardized. This is a laminated wooden arc, and this is another one. And then in the top, I have the shell, you see, or you see a contreplaqué of wood over there. And this is the head of the column that you saw before. And let's say, well, this is a bit wider in the proportion. A person is something like that in relation to the whole thing. And someone sitting will be something like this. But this is much wider, you see. It is and this is the link. So basically, this is a parabolic arc who is holding, let's say, the width of the whole roof inside. And the width itself is stabilized by those obliquous elements who are just bringing the width, you see, of the roof into this arc. Maybe another point also who can be interesting to know, it is again, you know, like in the entrance, you see, the idea of you see, of, let's say, of a palm tree, you see. And also what I thought it is interesting, you see, this is maybe also very figurative, you see, but I feel very free. I feel very free, at least at this time. I continue also feeling like that. But I mean, I was thinking, you see, I would like to do, to express the idea of the force coming here. And many people think this is a kind of reminiscence of a Corinthian capital, which it is not the case. It's more, you see, it is the head of because also it's interesting, you know, also if you want, you see, a Corinthian capital could be also the head of the women. So I mean, it is not, we are not very far away. And here you see also other views of the space. You see, it's also interesting because the space is still is very intimated. And you see the decision of also using wood was, I think there is also a picture in which we can see how the light, yes, this is a good. You see, this is with artificial light. You see, we have lamps in the wall that when you enlightened the interior of the wooden pattern, you know, you became very nice. You see a very nice contrast between the light at the interior and the light at the exterior, and the shadow patterns also of the views into the roof. Now you see, this is also interesting to see this project close to the other. I always spoke about a kind of research, recherche patiente. in terms of other architect. Another of Corbusier will say recherche patiente, because you need a lot of patience, you know, until a building is concluded or something like that. You need really to patient a lot. You see, it's interesting also the fact once you discover a shape and you have used a material, you are always or often tempted to change material and to use almost a similar shape in another context. Because this happens in this particular project in Toronto, which it is a galleria in the center of Toronto. The building here is the Toronto Dominion Bank, done by Mies van der Rohe in downtown. And this is, I think, the Bank of Commerce done by Ian Pei in the center of the city. And this is a galleria, who I will show you. You see, basically the construction principle is very much inherent, or the idea is very much inherent of the idea of the other roof. However, what there was wood is here done using steel. And also was there the control of the light was much more laterally done, and here the light is just filtered through the steel pattern into the ground with the shadows in the ground. And you see, let's say, if you look in elevation, I don't know if I have a slide which, yes, you see, well, also interesting it is the fact, you see, of the relation of this Galleria drop in between of the offices and also the Clarks and Gordon building and into the Heritage Plaza. You see, you have this kind of steel construction which just drop in, you see. And you see, it is like, this could be a good understanding of the problem. It is if you have a street and then you have, let's say, trees or whatever, or you have trees, you see, at both sides of the street, you can define an alley, you see. For me, it was also easy, you see, to, then the trees, in the case of that, they are very simple. They are just, you see, going like this, and then the beams just put over there. Then it's interesting when I have had to change. There is a certain moment in which we are overspanning over the Clarks and Gordon building. What I create is here just a frame, and then the tree was no more necessary because there was a triangular frame going over all the way along, because this is quite an statical height. And then you see the trees, in the fact they are situated like this. You see, they are situated like that. Then I come back into the facade without very much touching the facade. And then I have here the gutter, the corner, and here also. And this is glazed outside. And this is then the frame who is filtering the light into the interior. And this can be the elevation. This can be the elevation a person made, then be something like that, because in this case, the height is something like 22 meters. It's a bit higher than before. However, you see, the whole thing stays independent of the surrounding buildings. Something who also encouraged me, you see, in this way, I think it was not decisive, but encouraged me very much, you see, to bring this idea of the tree, you see, of the tree, and of the alley of tree, because looking in perspective, you see, there are many of those trees. It is the fact that, as you know, you see, it was in Canada, and Canada is one of the few countries, except Lebanon, who makes reference to a tree in his flag. You see, he has the maple leaf, and I think this is so beautiful, isn't it, to have a tree as a sign, a tree. And I thought, well, this certainly works with the whole idea. Hopla. You see here, also from the plaza, you see into the Galleria, and those are two big windows who are operable. These are also, you see here how the windows move down in steel, and then you see here also the independence of the facade from the Galleria, and also the lacing of the Galleria gives this shadow pattern. You see it here, not only in the ground, but also in the facade. And here, some figures on the montage of the, so the construction process was also, in this case, extremely well studied by the construction manager who achieved in a very short time, you see, a period of time, the montage of the whole Galleria using very, very rational systems, invented by itself. For example, putting a support, you see, mounting the arcs at the end and moving them into the definitive position, almost sliding them in those two tracks here, you see, and putting them into the definitive position because having built the ground of the Galleria, it was almost impossible to circulate with a heavy crane in the interior. So they use a crane just in the entrance, and then just they pull through all those elements one after the other and put them there. Also, those are photographed in the shop. If we can get this a little bit better focusized, you see, because they are, you see also, once you see those photographs, for me, you see, as a European, this is very much North America. You see, because the pieces are so big, and the shops are ready to do those unbelievable big pieces. They take just the half of a building and build it at once and then bring it. Then you see here also during the montage of the trees at the interior. Also always you see welding on the side, a lot of welding, and also a lot of bolts, links, and welding links you see also during the montage of the trees at the interior. And here at the end of the whole operation. Yes, and this is during the night, you see at the end the plaza and then the Galleria through. Yeah. Now, you see, this is a completely different context, and who also is very much related to the use of materials. And you see, working in a very old building, you see, in which you maybe have reminiscence of parts of the building, of who are, let's say, 700 years old, something like that. This is a building in Basel, in Spalenhof. So it's, it's one of the oldest. This was the city council used to be there, the very first city council, and then they moved into the old city council actual. So that the building is, as I tell you, one of the very, very old buildings in Basel, with wooden structures and also stone structures that we have had to respect and to trade with a lot of care, and also to trade them accord with the people who are specialized in the treatment of it. Why the material plays an important role? It is because, you see, the context by itself is so strong that, in my opinion, or at least I have had in this case, you see, I thought the way to overcome that in modern terms, or this is what I can interpret modern terms, it is very much, you see, relating it to modern material, for example, steel, glass, and other things, and also to introduce single pieces, you see, and create a dialectic between new and old, almost leaving untouched the old parts, for example, leaving untouched the wood, and however having here a leg, you see, in steel, and also having here the staircase in steel, and however having those old walls here. Renovated according to the conditions that well, what I has not explained, it is what I has had to do, it is a small theater, a cabaret theater at the interior of this structure, called Taburetli is called. It's just a small place in which something like 50 persons can, or 60 persons can get together. This is then the garderobe. It's necessary a minimum and infrastructure. So a garderobe was done. Then you see here the garderobe, how opens the door, the table of the garderobe. Then a staircase going up into the upper level, in which it was the theater. You see here the staircase. The staircase is done by using glass. You see it from down to up, and from up to going down. And then this big piece of metal. You see this big piece of metal, who was also at the other side holding a big load coming up. Because one of the other things that we need to do, it is to create new static conditions for the new loads of the several theaters and the new uses of the house according to the new codes. And You see here also again the staircase as a single piece. You see in the center of the building, and then also this is through the staircase into the saal, in which you see here this is put horizontal now, and you see here the wall, which is one of the oldest wall at the end of the space, one of the oldest walls of the. This is a Gothic Cell, for example. Here you see a Gothic Cell with the staircase here, and then you have here the bridge going from the Gothic Cell into the other cell. So you come in here, you go up, you go into the Gothic Cell, and then you go into the space. And here, during the construction of the piece, you see those are the steel pieces, and then here you have the people working on the shop, you see, and putting the pieces together. Many of the details, of the conclusion details, was necessary to do them on the side, you see, or I mean not on the side, but on the shop, you know, discussing with the people doing that, not only calculating, but also very much, you know, by hand, you see, saying how to conclude. You see it here also how to do the holes, or how you see very much the details of the conclusion, and the joints and many of those things. So in a way, you see the work of a main structural piece can become very much like a sculpture. You see here also this is the interior space of the saal, and this is the garderobe. You see, so basically we have done 2 new rooms. This is one, and this is another one. And then you see also here some details of the beams, and also here the garderobe. The garderobe is interesting because being in this space, you see, I wanted to touch it as less as possible, but however, you see, it has to work as a garderobe, so it has mirrors, and then it could be deployed and opened for the upper saal. Then this is also the bar at the interior, who could be open and closed. And also the windows, you see, I have to dark the space, and then they can open and close when, like a jacket when you get hot. And this is also the garderobe, in which you see you have this ambiguity. You see, it was necessary to lock the garderobe because it was only one person to serve the 2 garderobes, you know, the upper and the lower. So it was necessary to lock this here and then go up. So it was also possible to introduce this ambiguity. So personally, I think, if I can step back just to give you some comments on this work, you see, materials in this case helps very much to overcome the problem, because it's such a responsibility, you know, to stay in front of a building that you are happy. When you have a specialist, you have a so-called Denkmalpfleger, who is almost taking, you know, is the man who look for the monument, you see, who is almost taking all the responsibility about the, you see, things, how you need to leave them, the things that you can touch, those that you can not touch. And then at the other side, you see, also you get a certain freedom, even if very restrained, to then introduce several pieces and create a theme. In this case, one theme was the idea of the versatility. You see, things who opens and close, the garderobe who can be transformed, the entrance, the doors, and so. And another theme was this central staircase, who, even if it was, just to give you a small reference on this piece, you see, even if it was a piece, you see, who was basically was like this, we has had to hold a very big eccentric load coming in this place, and the old wooden roof was like that, and it was not able with regular beams, you know, to hold that. So we introduced then a support here, and then recreate an element at the interior who was like that, and then here another support. You see, between those supports we have had a balcony in between, and then here we have had the staircase that you saw before. This is the staircase. Quite steep, by the way, and the staircase was not touching here. It was almost floating, so that you see this is basically, it is a three articulated element. This was also articulated here, and the staircase is hold here together. And then even from this element, we hold, you see, the roof. Then in order to achieve a junction here, we have had a piece that it was like an egg done, see, as a transition between this load and the steel structure, so that people, in this case, could walk here and also go up through the staircase with a handrail. There. So this is the basic. It was, as you saw, also quite a free form. You see, with the support here. And the other part, you see, they was more or less anecdotic. There was a small pieces, you see, like the doors of the garderobe or the central garderobe. Yes, this is also one of the, let's say, also an early work in which, let's say, if in the previous one, you know, the relation between modern and old and the choice of the material plays an important role, here was almost an exercise how, you see, how to clad an existing shop, warehouse, you see, and give him a new signification. And then the resources was two. First of all, we was, you see, the choice of the material. You see, the choice of the material first resource. It needs to be a very economic or a very cheap material or a very economic material. So we decide to use aluminum crude and concrete. Crude because it is the almost, you see, the regular aluminum that you can get very easy. And then you can get it also corrugated, you can get it flat, you can get it in many ways, and is easy to work with. And then another resource was, you see, how to transform this building, not only with the cladding, but also finding a thema. And the thema was, even if through the limitation of the material, you see, we create a big restriction, you see, but it was a kind of pintoresque. I mean, pintoresque in the meaning of painting, pintoresque in the meaning of painting, or, I mean, each facade should appear like a different painting, or like a different facade, even using the two materials. So the material will create the unity, and the treatment of the material in each one of the facades will create then the thema that it make different a facade of the other. For example, in this case, you see here the south facade is done by using corrugated aluminum, but the corrugated aluminum, you see, is put, you see the elements of the corrugated aluminum, as you know, you see the corrugated aluminum is something like that. Then we took those elements and then we make a sinus, and then we put the corrugated metal like that. So we became a double rigidity because, let's say, the pieces with the transversal links, you see, became then not only, let's say, modulated, but also very rigid in this way. So it permits to make quite a high element, you see, in the facade. Then in order to emphasize this movement here, in cross-section, we cut them like this and cut them like that, so that even, you see, looking from the front, you see the view of the sinusoid will be even more accentuated. Even looking into the top of the building, you see the view of the sinusoid will be clear, readable. And also because this, even if it is also aluminum, it is put inclined, this will appear black because it is under the shadow, or it becomes the light in another way. Then even in order to make more plastic and readable, you know, the client came and say, for safety reason, I need a lot of light in this area here. And so we put lamps, you see, to the exterior of the facade, like that, small lamps. But we took them far away of the facade so that you will see also the shadow of the lamps, you see, follows also from time to time the curves, and then makes also drawings in the facade, not only the vertical component. And then this is quite a, let's say, a plastic relation. Interesting is also that this is the south facade. It means the movement of the day and the hours of the day will also make a very significant change in the facade itself. You see it here. you can also see well the shadows of the light and also the reflection of the sun, and also this you see here also, and also the vibration, the vertical vibration produced by the reflection of the sun in the facade. Let's say this is a work who has been done something like 12 years ago. This is also, you see, depending in the hours of the day, also the facade is extremely sensible. You know, when you get a very rasant light, you see, or vertical one. And then what it is also interesting, it is this shadow here, this is also pure aluminum. And here also you see the cut from which I spoke before, you see with the way how it floats and moves over the concrete structure. Then this was the other tema. This was the north facade. You see, I spoke about the problem of, you see, the verticality also is very generous in the south facade, isn't it? Now, in the north facade, the problem was different because, you see, the north facade has just zenith light. You see, zenith light means a very diffuse light. Now, how to emphasize the plasticity of whatever a thing in zenith light? So I propose to use an S profile, just cut out. You see, this is one piece in metal and the other one. You see, we have here a piece to fix it. You see, and then again another one. And those are pieces, very, very long, with a joint. You see, maybe they are, let's say, 10 meters with 30 feet long, and then they have a joint and another joint, so as long as possible. The interest of this situation is this, that you will get here, you see, quite a reflection. Here you will get shadow. You see, this will be almost black. Then you will get a bit less reflection going into this very high reflection, and then again less, and then it will break in shadow. So you will get not only a linear structure, but also in the linear structure, you will sensibilize the structure also to this zenith light. And this here, again, in a frame with the basement, and because we have had windows here who pre-exist, we also incorporate them in the whole modulation, in the whole longitudinal modulation, even an entrance into the backside, and even incorporating that into the whole building. You see it here. Well, you see the linear effect. You see these parts who are more plastic, those who are also two interesting elements. You see, this is the use of those plates here. You see, just trying to find all type of use of this element. You see, we recreate here. You see, those are corrugated plates who are 17 meters long in one piece. It was just, you see, the problem was not you see, it was just to put them on the side. You see, in one piece, 17 meters, from the top into the bottom, and holding them here with a small element in the top, and also with a small element, so that a very flat backside of east side, you know, confronted to the sunlight, you know, very horizontal, and the morning sun. And then there was an elevator body here that it needs to be cladded, and in order to distinguish it, so was the proposition of using, I think you say scales like a fish, scales of, in German I will say Schindel, but very big ones, you see, very big, of aluminum, you know, cladding it, turning around the corners, you see, turning around the corners, also turning into the top. Even if the rest was angular, it was also a beautiful way, you see, to, in this other facade, you see, to get in this flat east side of the building, you see, to get the two towers, there was two, you see, to get them a bit as, let's say, with the scales going down like that. You see, and then in framing the whole thing, you see, you see, and using those 17 meters high vertical lines, you see, and presenting a very flat facade that during the day when the sun turns, you see, those elements has the tendency also to give a shadow against that, and then became much more plastic. Also that here, with also a small service door, you see, for here in the corner. This is another, so each one of those facades could be conceived, you see, like a separate picture. Also the corner here, the corner was very important. You see the corner expecting to, you see, to put here a sculpture, which until today has not happened. For just at the time was for economical reasons. It may maybe be one of those days there. You see, now you see how to give a global idea. You see, well, before that I have to explain you also, you see the doors, you see the west facade in opposition to the east facade and having almost the same light condition, you know, sun rising and sun setting, you see, was also done using those very big panels. You see, those very big panels. And then you see the lamps and the doors when they are closed. For example, a possible lecture of the lamps, and there are many lectures of those things. You see, they are like shields, you see, put in the top, you see they have a lamp behind, and they give a transversal lighting. But if you look, for example, the slide that you have there, you see, you can imagine one lamp, another lamp, and the door, isn't it? And it is and you see, this is the other point. It is the eye. You see, now you see, I spoke about the pintoresquism. You see, it means, you know, different paintings, like you see different sculptors, something like that. But how to link them? You know, how you see the problem was from the very beginning. It was a foreign body. Yes, you see, a strange body. You see, it was not the something that we have done. We have to give a life to this body, isn't it? We have to give a life. You saw the doors before, and this is, you saw also, if I can step just a moment back. Also, you see this place for the sculptor. You see, this is the place for the sculptor. And then, if you, pardon, you see it here again, and then here. You see, you saw the doors and the facade. Now, the scales and many other things. So if I do an axonometric of the building, you see, we could say this is one side. Then I have here the gates, doors. And then this is the building. So you see, lorries come in and out every day, a lot of them. You see, many lorries wait in the doors. The gates open, the big gates open, and the lorries come in and then goes out. If I put the sculpture of the eye with those here, you see the whole building became a little bit like so the whole building is a kind of, and the lorries you see coming out and in, you see, it's like the history of Jonas. So I want also to do another small drawing. This is very famous. You know that, isn't it? This is, and then. It is the elephant and the snake, isn't it, of Saint-Exupéry. You see, I mean, it is also, it's very important, this kind of game in which you see the idea of, you see in the beginning the toy of the children. It's the toy of my children. I mean, it's not, you see, I make that with the toys of my children. So it was an exercise for me to take the toys of my children and things of my house, you see, to hang the curtains, you see, whatever you see, pencils and whatever I found, you see, to do that. And in a way, you see, it's also a matter of, I mean, the elementarity of the thought takes absolutely no force to the complexity of the solution. You see what I mean? In the beginning, something can be extremely spontaneous and simple. You see what I mean? I want to walk, where I am going. You understand? That's the question. But to walk is just a very natural thing. I mean, the thing is where my steps are bringing me. But I am also arriving there step by step, isn't it? Also? And a step is a very simple thing. And a very long trip, needs to be started in a small step. And so sometimes, you see, those thoughts, is, in my opinion, an effort, to from the picturesque to pass to the literary. You understand? And to give to the whole thing a force, at least in my mind. If the people don't read it like that, let me tell you, is not important. And I think here, I feel, as I tell you, here, surrounded of people, and I want to communicate a very intimate experience, and so I don't worry if it sometimes looks a little bit like a joke, isn't it? Then you see here the doors. You see also, for example, the linearity of this is modular, and this is almost the same module, but there is a continuity in the door. So there is also behind that a very beautiful idea. It is the idea of a facade who can be transformed. I think, in my opinion, in the transformation, I will come in my last talk to that, about the metamorphosis and the idea of the metamorphosis. This is a mother of evolution in the architecture, an unbelievable mother. We dispose, of let's say, not only of mechanical and physical elements, to create and recreate new architectures based in the idea of the metamorphosis, but also I think we are mature also in our needs and in our understanding of culture, to introduce those components in a major scale in the architecture. Could you imagine, for example, a whole facade who get transformed? You understand? Not only that here, which is just the half of the facade who get transformed, but the whole facade who get transformed and can be like a curtain, open from one side to the other, or things like that. This is, in my opinion, feasible today, and certainly a challenge for the new generation or for the evolution of the architecture. You see, all the pieces are very repetitive. They are all the same, just the measure has been changed. It is like, you see the measure, and the inch is also the same. And now I would like to jump to another subject, also important, because it will show you at once, that this is what I say before. That in many buildings, the construction process, can be more or less relevant. When you are working as an engineer, the construction process is fundamental. For example, cantilevering, bridges built in a process of cantilevering. The construction process is fundamental to understand the shape of the bridge, or many other type of buildings. In this case, it was not as much the construction process of the bridge itself, but the construction process of all the sides. This is a bridge in Valencia, and I would like to focus your attention not in the bridge itself, but in the way how it was built. The bridge is over an underground station. You will see it. There is a plaza down the bridge. There is a plaza down the bridge. This is the arc. The arc is inclined. I wanted to do an arc, who incorporates in the city, as a kind of a big sculpture. And then you have here, this light coming out from the ground. You see here also the bridge over the plaza. And there is, as I tell you, this is a station here down for underground. So people comes down and goes into the station. You see here the entrance into the station. You see here also some details of the plaza itself covered by the bridge. And here also the plaza from the front with the light cannons bringing light into the station itself. And here also you see an interesting thing. It is the underground, of course, don't works the whole day. It works only, let's say, until 1 o'clock, and then until 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it's closed. So I has done the entrances into the underground that they can be locked also. So in the night, the entrance disappear, or let's say is almost part of the ground floor. You see it here, you see when it is closed, how it looks. And there, behind is open. You see here it is. You see, this is the process of opening. The interior. This is also a very interesting material. You know, it's very, very traditional, especially from our area, from Valencia. Even if you have the most brilliant exponents are in Barcelona, in the works of Gaudí. But in our region, you see, there is a lot of small broken pieces of ceramic used for cladding. You see, so we use these broken pieces of ceramic cladding the whole interior of the station, and also white concrete. You see, this is the station, the interior, and this is daily light. Then this is the site. You see, sometimes I think the photograph of sites are even more interesting, because, or also the site is as an event is also extremely interesting. You see here, you see the bolts, almost half finished or finished, and also very interesting to see the light cannons, how they work, because no artificial light is there in place. Also here, you see the light coming in. Also here, you see the upper part of the staircases, enlightened, the holes here. The lamps, you see, done in trencadís. You see this broken ceramic, the lamps incorporated to the walls. And this is the prefabricated roof of the station. So the station down the bridge was built simultaneously, and we had only 14 months to do both things together. So it was impossible to conclude the station and then build over the bridge. Nevertheless, because also this vault is only the dimension for a certain type of loads and not to hold the whole width of the bridge during construction. So this was, you see, this is after construction. You see also the skylight, you know, how the skylight has been built in the plaza. And we have now to change the carousels. So the problem was how to build the bridge, you see, when the station was under construction, or how to build bridge and a station at the same time. And I mean, maybe, well, the solution is very reasonable. You build the bridge apart, and then you build the station. Once the station is finished, you move and put the bridge on displays. These are also details of the windows, of the entrances. And then this is the side during construction. You see, here is the bridge, and here is the whole of the station. You see, this is the bridge during construction, and here was the site in which the station was being built. You have here also several views of the deck of the bridge in steel, you know, and welding. You see the massive pipe of the, not pipe, it is a massive steel piece, you see, who becomes the cord of the arc, you see, who spans over 170 meters, who makes around, let's say, 500 feet, 510 feet. Then you see the bridge here before it was transported, and here, in this case, over the station, you see. And to transport it, we just pull it. You see it here. This is the people watching. This is the. It took just several hours. Thank you. You see, so the bridge started here, and then moves as the people watch. You see, it moves almost like. Yeah. Interesting is also to see the cross-section of the bridge. You see the box girder, who is holding the torsion of the eccentricity and the inclined arc. And then also in several, looking from the other side, you see the bridge in one etape, in another etape, and in almost in the definitive position. And then here the bridge just after arriving into its definitive position. As you see also some views also of the bridge concluded with the open gate and the closed gate of the station, just to signify that the station is still there. Now another project you see in which what I would like just to signify is, you see, I could also speak in this project about the relation between city and project and architecture, you see, but I would like very much to resume my intervention, to the material and to the construction difficulties that we have had, and about the basic idea of each one of those projects. In this case, I would like to explain you that here. You see, the station is situated in a hill, you see. And in a small scale, you will have, let's say, this is the Lake of Zurich. The lake used to arrive here, and then this is a moraine hill from the glacier. Then this, you see, it was a lot of trees here, and then people arrive and make the walls of the sea here, and then this becomes a flat area, and then they started building here. Then they also transformed that in the Berkeley plan, and then, well, the thing it is that it becomes the area of Bellevue in Zurich, flat, beautiful area, with the hill of the Obre Promenade, so-called. Later on, the railroad came and make a cut here and leave 2 lines. And then our exercise was in this situation, you see, in the situation of the moraine, to enlarge the station and make it to a major station with a lot of traffic. You see, sometimes we have each 2 minutes, 1 train. It's a very, very heavy traffic station, and important also for the whole regional scheme. And so now looking to this particular element, part, I would like to emphasize, you see, the different character of the 2 parts, who still today is conserved. This is very urban, and this is very green, with the very first houses built outside of the city. You see, schools, and so the whole hill has a different character of that here. And now you see the new intervention, you see, has considered, you see, the fact that there was a cut here, and this was, and that we has had to step back and cut more on the hill. And in this situation, you see the decision, well, the basic idea was that I would like very much to conserve this border here, and also this situation there. And for that, you see, we propose, you see, a structure who will permit with a wall, with permanent anchorage. I will explain also the why permanent anchorage, who will hold the houses, who sometimes are here. And even also sometimes, you see, in a particular case, we even hold a tree, a big tree. And then we recreate gardens here and a pergola. You see, in addition to the, I mean, not in addition, but a little bit conserving very much the character of the upper part, and leaving here, you see the possibility of people promenading over there. Also, people waiting here to the trains. Then having here an element, to heat this part, leaving all the anchorage accessible, or part of the anchorage in any case accessible for supervision reasons, and then having here the other 2 lines and recreating in the underground. Even a shop mall who permits also to make more safe and also more interesting the link, and also to have a series of shops in the underground who works. And then you see, in contrast to that, putting here a light canopy, and then having the suspension of the catenaries, and then the trains here. So this is a little bit the scheme of the station. You see, just that you recognize the scale, you see, you will find something like that. Now, you see, as much as in many other projects, you see, there is always, in my opinion, or has been until now for me necessary, also, you see, to take a little bit an approach, you see, to the problem. You see, first of all, relating it to the city. Second, relating it to the construction. For example, all this area here became very heavy, you see, because we have earth, we have the gardens here. As I tell you, the houses are here. It was necessary for safety reason to make an independence between the wall and this part, as much as this part can maybe fall, but the wall will still stay there and the houses will be safe. For example, in case of incident at the interior of the station. And many other thoughts like that, you know, technical nature, you know, who was conditioning not only the process of construction, because sometimes we have had from here to there something only like, let's say 90 feet, something like that. So houses was here. So it was in a very narrow, and sometimes we are getting here into the ground, you see, also for technical needs, and we are getting here until 45 feet on the ground, which it is quite much. And so it was the site by itself. Also the fact that we have had to build that, you see, as let's say, as leaving the train circulate the whole time. So the traffic in the station was never interrupted. So it was quite a challenge in such a tight site, you see, to eat up and to remove, you see, to try to combine all the safety of the use of the station during the site, and at the same time thinking that from here to there, sometimes we had, I think, at least 27 meters, you see, between the space in which we could work. So this was quite an interesting thing. But however, I think the lecture of the station also needs to be another one than the pure technical one. And even if the technical problems was quite a challenge, and also I was, let's say, quite nervous because it was one of the first jobs, and being responsible at the one side of the architecture, but also of the engineering, was quite a big thing. I thought, well, we should also have a little bit fun with the station. And you see, the basic idea of the station is not only the whole functional complex and also the urban context, and so there is another one. You see, I wanted for the first time experiment with the body, you see, and with anatomic thoughts. And I thought on the gesture, and I started with my hand, you see. And the first thing was the idea, you see, let's say, you see, of the hand, an open hand, which it is a matter of sincerity and openness and everything, you see. And from the open hand, you see, I chose this part. And this part becomes the column. Also here in the corners, also there and here. You see the vault turning around with different pillars in steel. You see here also a detail of the pipe in steel and the support and the pendular pillar here in the front. This is the place where we used to fix the clock. Then you see here during the site, you see the shapes of the formworks coming from one side. This etap was finished, then we started from the other side coming in. Also a lot of provisional small bridge was necessary to be built. And then the train circulating during the site. You see here is a regular train in the station. You see it also here from the top, you know, we was very close to the houses around. And then this is this became then the promenade. You see here the bridge in steel, prefabricated also to be mounted in the most easiest way. You see also here the same bridge with the connectors. You see for the concrete, it was a mixed structure with a concrete plate. Also other provisional structures, and here building the canopy. You see here very well a cut on the shape. Then you see the montage of one column. It's also interesting, you see, this is also a point that I should explain you is just very fast. Is the fact, you see, the station is geodetic. The station is not flat. You see, a train is coming from a tunnel and going into a tunnel. And just more or less the center is horizontal. So we has built all the station like that. And even the columns are like that. but you don't see it because they are also inclined. If they was vertical, you will immediately see it. You understand? But in all the directions, they are inclined. Even the Galleria is like that. So the whole station, I mean, it is like a sausage, isn't it? It is all the same. Yes, you see here also some details of the, you see here the formworks, you know, sometimes quite complex, with very good people, you know, making the concrete on site, very good people. There was 2 groups of people, unbelievable good. And this is the Galleria, just after the finish. You see, this was the original project. Today, they add many things, as it happens today. Everybody want to put his name here, and you see, and so, and then they have put plastic banks here at the interior, but it's life, isn't it? Oh, pardon. Then you see here also, again, during the site, always, you know, observe the site. The site can be extremely beautiful also by itself, even in a certain disorder. You see, sometimes you have real openings, and then the sun comes into the interior. You see, in a way that you will not see it then later when it is concluded, isn't it? Also, in my opinion, a site, if you like the construction, and so it's a very inspiring and beautiful place where also the smell and I don't know, all kinds of smells, of course. Then you see here the formworks. You see also that, the joints. You see, when you work by exposed concrete, you have to take a lot of care with all the things. You have to coordinate very well the installation. For example, not suspended ceilings. Everything, you know, just a moment, looking back, you see those are the holes for the lamps. And then all the lamps are here, then the loudspeakers are here. Everything has to be incorporated, and the coordination between project and the different types of installations and disciplines who comes they has to be very well coordinated. It needs a very big effort, you see, to achieve that effectively the emergency lighting and the other lighting, they are all incorporated into the concrete. Also the lamps are also part of the concrete, and loudspeakers are here and everything, so that the pure shape of the concrete comes out. You see it here also and this is also when you arrive. So also another idea that I wanted to create a very strong structure, you know, who dominates on the shop. But you see, with the time, you see the shops are dominating the situation, which it is also natural, you see. But also the signalétic was very austere, you see, very little element, you know, to mark, because the way is so clear and so easy to find. You see it here, this is a shop, as it was in the beginning, and then the light. You see, this is the concrete. You see, this is this, and then the concrete over there. This is one column that we couldn't build, and then we had to suspend the whole with those 2 members. Then you see here the curve of the station. Also, you see, this is another event. You see a pure engineering event. I mean, you see, in plan and in elevation, you know, the tracks was given by engineers. But you see the fact of to have a curve, you know, and then to have the possibility to look the station, which is 280 meters length, which it is, let's say, 880 or 900 feet length. You see, but it seems to be much longer because you don't see the end. You understand? It is so the curve helps a lot, and the fact of you see the shape, you know, turning around like a toroid. You see, having this kind of rotational geometry. You see rotational geometry in which things are turning. You see, so the idea of the rotational geometry, you see, is also very much emphasizing the idea of the dynamic of the trains turning around. So in a way, also following very softly, you see, softly the givens of the engineers, you know, it was also possible to achieve a kind of dynamic, also the repetition, who was also a good thing for the modularity. You know, all the pieces, you see, all the columns were equal, all the segments of the roof was equal. Just sometimes we have had to do some concessions in the longitudinal modulation, but we could clarify that because we make the joints between the formworks quite wide, and then sometimes we make them shorter, sometimes a little bit wider, and using that we could achieve in the whole thing. You see, what it is also interesting, it is to see that in the fact the station is almost a non-station because it disappears hidden behind the roofs and so in the middle of the city. Then you see these are trains passing by or effects of the lighting in the night. Shadows also in the concrete. And then you see, as I tell you, the proximity of the center of the city into the station and also the relation between city and station, in my opinion, is very important. To understand the whole project, it was not a place to do a gesture with the station. It was a place to incorporate, you see, the heavy traffic of trains and to hit it and to incorporate it, but without covering it. It could be also possible to cover the whole things and make new apartments, but in my opinion, I started explaining you the topographical situation and the very, very particular situation in this place with the beautiful housing up in the top of the hill and the city. So I think it was also correct to proceed like that. Now, you see, it's just a small parenthesis to explain you an experience with concrete, which is, you see, I was in charge from the Swiss Association of Concrete Makers to do them a pavilion for an exhibit for an interior room, and who could be used then later on for somewhere else. And then I produced this machine as a very early try, doing a machine in which I wanted to try to put the concrete in movement. We know concrete light, we know heavy concrete with all type of concrete, but concrete in movement is a rare thing, you see. And so a little bit is rare, but I don't know if you know that Eugène Freycinet, who was the founder of or one of, yes, I think the founder of the pre-stressing, or very first patent in pre-stressing was done by Eugène Freycinet. He studied pre-stressing micro concrete and making wings for planes. This project was never achieved, but he has done all kind of. So it's also extremely, you know, in the 30s and in the 40s, people was, well, in the 30s, especially the 40s, was a difficult year. Let's say, in the 20s and in the early century, people was extremely daring, you see, in his ideas of, and the hope of the use of the materials. And I would like just to show you that here, you see, and look very much the fact that I wanted to achieve forms who could be extremely related to the body. Let's say to the body. When I say to the body, I mean, you see, to see. In which, let's say, formally, you see, the inspiration was strongly should strongly be related to the idea of to a certain sensuality of the use of forms, and just if you hold that in your mind, and we can go forward with the slides. See, you will maybe see ribs, you see, and you will also see circular elements, you know, turning around, and also you will see a very tactile and soft way to use concrete in a way in which you never more think, you see, or I think, or I hope. You see that, so you see so it's a kind of not only moving the concrete, but also giving it almost a very sensual, like the idea of the flash or the skin, which it is possible to achieve not using extremely sophisticated elements. And so the idea of the organicity, the idea of the detail, you see, I mean, the idea of of, you see, how a piece, you see, will link to the other, you see, in this place. So in which you see the detail by itself, you see, and the shape of the detail became by itself not only, I mean, more than the result of a very elaborate geometry, the result of this will be a section, for example, through here, you see, and also who permits us, you see, recreate, let's say, as a dream, the idea of the breast, you say, breast. And you see, now I will show you this project, but I will not do any comment on the construction. You have, I will just show you the project, which it is also another station who follows the station of Stadelhofen. And I think also you have very much to think that, you see, this object was built by extremely careful and well, let's say, a very gifted people has been working there, putting their hands to put this concrete, to put this metal and everything. And I think it's also very important to start watching the buildings also from the end side into the origin, not only from the origin into the end. You see what I mean? It's very beautiful also to understand the side of as a process, you know, the way how things are put, and also to get close to the people who are on the side, and also because they are fundamental in the fact they are those who put their hands, and if someone, you see, risk the life, is certainly not the architect. They are the people who are on the side who do that, who goes up and so this is the station in Lyon. The station in Lyon, I will not give very much explanation. I want just to, basically is built in concrete, aluminum, steel, and glass. It has also granite in the pavings. The concrete is white concrete, is clear concrete. It's using only white cement and natural aggregates, natural gravels from the area, and sand, also a little bit gray, light sand. And it's interesting, when you use this type, you get a very light concrete, but also it is something in the color of the concrete who remembers the site because the gravels and everything is from the area. So it's not pure white, it's sometimes a little bit beige or a little bit gray, and it's, yes. You see here some views of the roof. You see the steel structure and the reflex of the sunlight here. Also here, you see in the aluminum. As you see, the facade behind is done just using pure concrete and then glass in between. You see it also here. The esplanade, those are cobblestone in granite, and the handrails are all done in concrete, and also that's steel and glass. And then also you see there are rules of the use of the material. For example, the steel never touched the ground. The steel is always ported by the concrete. Like in the library, for example. You see, we have this spindle in steel who is, so you see the steel arrives here, and then there is a beam of concrete here. So never, you see, there is not a direct relation between the supporting element and the ground. You see here is in the Galleria who brings from the airport into the station, and then the back of the station, here the Galleria from the other side with the roof in aluminum. You see here also another view from the front, and also here the wing. You see here also some details of the wing. You see this wing is all south-oriented, and we chose the inclination in the angle of the solstice. So after the, let's say, middle June, the sun is out of the interior of the space, and until November, it stays out of, exactly. And then comes again in, and this facade during the day gets sunny light in the interior of the hall, who permits to have almost a very low climatization. And the roof works, even if it is so open, works with, you see, this is the frontal support. Here also some details of the steel and the concrete. Also here the way how this concrete, also in my opinion, quite almost elephantic, isn't it? It's a bit like the feet of an elephant or something like that, touching the ground. Then here from the front, you see all the water pipes and supports of the roof. You see, the roof is basically an arc of 140 meter span. You see, and then all the forces comes into this point, comes into this area here. You see, also here is in my opinion, quite a nice detail how the concrete bend and also the border, sometimes sharp borders, sometimes flat, sometimes curved. You see here also at the interior of the building. Once you are in the building, you see through the transparency into the concrete galleria. This is the concrete galleria bringing into the trains. You see here, this is a concrete galleria with the staircases going down into the platforms. Also the modulation, you see it has been not prefabricated, only partially prefabricated, and then also big pieces was cast on side of white concrete. Concrete and steel, and the ground is granite. And here we have concrete all over. This is concrete, this is also polished concrete, this is concrete, and this is concrete. Everything that you see here except the armatures of the windows, who are sometimes open. You see, this is also interesting. When we don't have to cover anything, so we have leave it, except the trains, we leave it open. So for example, at the end of the station, the whole structure stays open and only partially covered because we are covering the lateral platform. Also, you see here the complexity of the triangular structure. You see modulated going up with this cut here, very thin and tiny cut in the concrete. Yes, also this element, you know, there is a tunnel because the train can pass through the station in a big speed. So what we have done is just close the triangles. You see, those triangles here are closed with another triangle. So it's a kind of repetitive, but however, who get more and more closer into the center and more open into the end. Yes, you see also from outside how the sun penetrates. You see, from the west side, penetrate into the interior of the structure. And here also, this is also a point that I would like just one sketch. I will do 2 sketches to this project. I think it is interesting. The first sketch are related to those elements. You see, you see, I was interested. In the idea of recreating a structure who is based in a way in certain proportions strongly related to the human body. This is one idea. So many of them, you see, hold the station, many of them. And the whole thing becomes a kind of modular basis. This is so. This is one point, and the second point, who I think is also very important to understand, the roof, as you have seen, the shape of the station is that here. Let's say this here. Shape of the station is this. This is the shape of the station. In the fact, you see, the idea of this shape could be generated by the idea of the eye. And this is as far important because someone say that, let's say, the painter Raphael will not have arms. You know, he will be such a good architect. I mean, he could certainly not be a painter, but a good architect, because the working instrument of an architect is very much related to the eye. It's the vision, it's the faculty of seeing and judging and inventing things. They are the two eyes and the eyes of the mind, you see, to invent it and to combine things. So in this way, I want also to underline something, that all those projects in which I have been working, you know, has been also possible not only because these people who execute them and who I appreciate so much, but also because many people have been helping me with their hands, you see, making models, you know, making drawings in my office. And so they are all, they participate all of this effort and of the, and certainly they contribute a lot to the projects. And you see here, for example, this is the central gallery going from one side to another. And this is also the end, you see, with the buttresser, you see, done in concrete, who makes the change into the arc in steel. This is the beginning of the arc. You see also the interior, you see, with the concrete, with the glazing, and then the interior space, with the terraces. You see also two views of the interior space. Then also here, the glazing facade, you see, in shadow, because the roof is producing a shadow at the interior. And then here, two views of the station in lighted. Those two slides define the end of my talk. I would like very much to thank you for your attention, and thank to the school for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.